If you're going to make a mistake, make a big one, because there's no point in making a small mistake. If you're going to, make it spectacular, you'll learn something from it.
Lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
Welcome to The Creator's Journey. I'm your host, Charles Gupton. Each week, I'll talk with creative leaders who face the same fears and obstacles we all face. What makes these folks effective are the processes they've developed that allow them to push through the darkness to consistently ship their work and make a difference. If you've ever felt that your fears and insecurities are getting the best of you, know that you're not alone. Every creator who works from the heart faces the same challenges. Come join our community at thecreatorsjourney.com for ideas and inspiration that will bring light and direction to your journey.
Here's the key to my front door. You got a pillow if you lost yours. You got a seat at my table. You got a home. Here's somebody who believes you. Let truth remind you. You've always got a place to go to. You got a home.
My conversation today is with Janet Kestin and Nancy Vonk. Although you may not know their names yet, I'm sure you're quite familiar with their body of work. They spent their advertising careers breaking rules, challenging the status quo, and poking and prodding others to do the same. They started out their careers as two women who wanted to do good work and enjoy their lives, with no ambition to push through ceilings into the leadership roles primarily held by men. But their first big rock in the pond as a creative team was a campaign called the Dove Litmus Test in the early 90s. That led to Dove's Campaign for Real Beauty, an advertising campaign that sparked a global discussion about our culture's definition of and obsession with manufactured beauty. Working together for over 20 years as a creative team, they spent 13 of them sharing the Chief Creative Officer role at Ogilvy Toronto. They decided to leave that position in 2012 to start their own company called Swim, a creative leadership lab where they help talented people gain the leadership skills they need to help their careers have greater impact. My excitement over talking with this dynamic duo rose to a white-hot level while reading their book, Darling, You Can't Do Both, their personal and professional journey to discover the challenges that women face at home and work. Their response to that discovery is played out in the award-winning, culture-changing advertising they shepherded, a blog called Ask Jancy, aimed at advising students about career thoughts in advertising, 2 books, and the personal mentoring of many dozens, if not hundreds, of up-and-coming advertising professionals. In 2012, Ad Age named them among the 100 most influential women in advertising. Welcome, ladies.
Thanks. We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
I love to hear unusual stories from other people's past. You each have a few. So tell us briefly about singing for a mass murderer and working in a whorehouse.
We thought that might get your attention.
Boy, did it.
Yes, it's Nancy speaking, by the way. You can tell because I have that nasal New Jersey accent compared to Janet's Canadian accent, if you will.
Canadian non-accent.
Right.
Good stuff.
Yeah, when I was a teenager growing up in New Jersey, I was a singer in a rock band at one point, and kind of one of the big highlights of that experience meant a tour in Europe and performing for a very high-profile person, I'll say, at one point who would be borne out in history as a mass murderer. So what that really means is we were in Romania, and we were such a hit. We had the media following us around, and which really just tells you that they don't get much live performance going from from North America and Romania. And ultimately were invited to perform for Nicolae Ceausescu, who was the leader of the country at the time and who was thought to be a friend of the United States. And we all know that ended very, very badly years later. There's a photograph somewhere collecting a tremendous amount of dust in my basement, where we're all standing with him and his wife, who was holding the bouquet of flowers we gave her upside down. So there you go. That's
how funny.
That's a little moment of life that's burned into my memory banks.
And yes, it was the well-behaved Canadian girl who worked in the whorehouse and didn't know it. My mother's family is extremely colorful, shall we say, and in the summers when I was a teenager, I worked for my uncle who had a truck stop hotel on this old highway that went north through Quebec, and they started to put they put a big highway, superhighway, through the province when I was 19, and that killed all the business that he had and that they had in all of those small towns. And so we spent the summer moving the hotel, literally packing up the hotel, putting it on 2 flatbed trucks, and with all the locals taking bets on whether it would break in half, it rode very, very slowly up the side of a mountain and was deposited onto land that was alongside the new highway. And so the next summer when I came back, business was incredibly, incredibly strong. And that was great. And I was happy for him. And I went back to my usual job of serving drinks and flipping eggs and chambermaiding. And I noticed that all of the local girls who I'd become friends with over the years seemed to be working way less hard than me and making way more money. And I could never figure out where they were while I was doing all of these things. And I just felt like, oh, how come I'm doing everything by myself? And I was feeling very hard done by. And at the end of the summer, I went home, and one of my friends there called me, and we were just, talking about how that summer had been. And she said, I know that you think that you were having kind of a letdown of a summer given how busy everything was, but I think what you never realized is that the way we were making all that money was by using those rooms that you were chambermaiding by the hour. So my first reaction was, how could I be so stupid and blind? And my second reaction was, ew. So that's really what happened.
You were a little naive girl,
I
Janet.
was a little naive girl. And then years later, the hotel was closed down, not because it was a house of ill repute, but because, like always, my uncle didn't pay his taxes. Everything gets caught by people not paying their taxes.
How funny. I'm a curious person, but there's some things I don't observe that get past me, and that probably would have been mine as well. And my first reaction was ooh as well. Well, as many great stories often do, it seems the journey to discovering the issues that affect the women you're speaking to in your marketing efforts were the very ones you had to pass through yourselves, such as missed career opportunities, networking connections that could open doors, home work challenges. Talk about some of your experiences and how you've redeemed them in your creative and communication work.
That's a very deep question. I think that obviously one of the great highlights of our career has been working on Dove, which you mentioned at the beginning. And from the very first thing that Nancy and I ever did together was that litmus test that you described. And up until that point, Dove had been a very successful brand that used mostly testimonials and various kinds of, soap on one half of your face and Dove on the other tests. And we, very early on in this first job that we ever did, we were given the information that Dove actually wasn't a soap and didn't act like a soap. And we didn't really believe that. And so we did this litmus test in our boss's office with all the soaps that were on the shelf. And we discovered that, in fact, it was true. Dove was a milder thing that wasn't actually a soap, and therefore it was easier on your skin. And what we felt out of that was that we'd been duped by all the soap brands, and we completely got up on a soapbox about it. And we did this campaign that demonstrated in the most objective way that one could have done at the time the difference between Dove and other soaps. And there were no women in the spot, and there was no pour shot in the spot. So all of the typical hallmarks of Dove advertising were gone. And we didn't try to persuade anybody of anything. We just showed them so that they could see the same thing that we saw and try and help them feel the same thing that we felt. And so it was an intelligent, it treated women with a lot of intelligence, I would say. And we tried ever after to work in this very respectful space around women, recognizing that they had intelligence and humor and all of the things that we had on the other end creating the work. So I think that if we felt like women weren't, I guess, respected in the work that advertising did, we didn't actually set out to change that. We started to change it inadvertently, and then we continued to do it intentionally.
I might add that we didn't just show up at Dove and say, you know what we need to do? We need to use litmus paper to determine if what you're telling us is true. Their research and development people sat down with us, and they showed us what the technical difference was, and they showed us litmus, what happened when you put litmus paper on any regular soap and versus Dove. So it turned from yellow to dark blue on every other bar, and it didn't turn any color on Dove. So there you go. I think that just to say a little bit more about what Janet just shared. She's talking, I think, when I listen to her, about us learning to put a real premium on being authentic. And it was true both of us as a creative team that showing up with an appetite for dealing with conflict was a good thing, and that being authentic in the work was going to pay off. We found that being truthful and really relentlessly honest really was a good way to communicate, was well received. And for us to get past our own aversion to conflict and go ahead and be prepared to mix it up when it came to challenging norms was worth it. And we broke big rules of Dove. When Janet described how things had been before that, this wasn't just, this is kind of how we roll. This was like enforced. This is how you do Dove around the world. So it was a big departure, and there was a lot of conflict around it. We and our great clients in Canada, in the little market of Canada, took a lot of flack. We were in hot water for changing the way things had always been done. But it was so successful, nothing speaks louder than results being really great. So it's a huge spike in sales. Suddenly, turned the people giving us a lot of grief for rocking the boat into converts to another way of how looking at another way at how we might more successfully communicate with that target and all of women. So that set us on a path really for our careers together that would unfold over many years, where we never looked back from, this is the right way to show up.
Success is so easy to look back on, and it just seems